page 90, and we're talking about sleeping during the day.
Oh, that's a good subject.
Well, we mentioned that you're allowed to sleep during the day, especially if it's to serve Hashem, to learn better, to pray better, any of those things. But a person has to have in mind while he's sleeping, or before he goes to sleep, I'm doing this so I can learn Torah better, not so I can, fulfill my bodily desires or things like that. Shiu kol ma'asav l'shem shamayim. We quoted last week Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, who says that in general it's a good practice to do always, whenever you're doing something, to always dedicate it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then you're doing a mitzvah. And it will be very easy to get many mitzvot that way. You eat, so say I'm eating l'shem yichud kosher Baruch Hu. I'm doing it for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm doing this so I can study Torah better. I'm walking in the streets so I can go to the Beit Knesset. And then everything you do becomes a mitzvah. So we're continuing with this train of thought. And we say, Im tzarich lishon bayom. And if a person is asleep during the day, it's the bottom of 90. See, the middle of 90, but the bottom paragraph in
Everything is for the sake of heaven.
What?
Everything for the sake of heaven.
That's what you should say. Vim tzarich lishon bayom. And if you have to sleep during the day, machamat she'asak b'Torah b'layla, because he studied Torah at night, or machamat she'rotze she'yeh lo koach la'asok b'Torah b'layla shlachrav, or because he wants to have strength to study Torah the next day. Rashai la'asot ken afilu lechatchila. Even on an ideal level, you're allowed to go to sleep, and there's no reason to be strict not to sleep if you're doing it because you studied Torah last night, or in order to study Torah tomorrow night. V'hu adin, page 90. V'hu adin, and this is the same idea, the same rule. Im yashan bayom machamat chushat gufo. If you're going to sleep, now we're 91, if you're sleeping during the day because your body's weak, or machamat choler because this person is sick, you're allowed to do this even on an ideal level. And everything should be judged based on what kind of person you are, what your physical capabilities are, and what you need in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's some halachot that we do this with. How much you sleep? You sleep based on the amount that you need. Other things, we base it on what your capabilities are. Unfortunately, other people have taken this idea to places they should not have gone. I'll give you an example. But in general, you have certain variables that you plug into halachic equations, and we don't know what to do with them exactly. Kind of like, Zev was bothered by, you can't exactly quantify ruach ra. So the same thing we have in other areas. For example, when we have a biblical mitzvah and a rabbinic mitzvah and they're clashing with each other, so that's an obvious one variable, the other variable. The one that's a deoraita, that's biblical, overrules the one that's rabbinic. When you have a mitzvah taseh and a mitzvah lo taseh, you have a positive command, a negative command. We have all kinds of rules. Which one takes precedence over the other one? We get into gray areas. For example, there's a term in halakha called kavod habiriyot. Respect for a person, your own self-dignity. Certain halachot that you're allowed to do because kavod habriyot is important, because your self-dignity is also important. Some say, for example, if a person doesn't have pre-cut toilet paper on Shabbat and he's in the bathroom, I'm sorry, but so a person is able to cut toilet paper because kavod habriyot. There are such opinions because at the end of the day, your self-dignity is important. The problem with these terms, or love a fellow Jew, sometimes you'll see that we're strict about over something else, but we don't have quantifiable terms. So when do you draw the line? When is too much? When is kavod habriyot irrelevant? When there are things that are more important than kavod habriyot. There are certain areas of halakha that are gray, and perhaps they're left for the poskim of our generation to figure out when we use them and when we don't use them. But this is a classic case of that. What a person is able to do. You have to do whatever it is that it takes for you to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This variable, when you plug it into a halachic equation, can get very complicated. Because where do you draw the line?
Well, medicine, of course, when halakha was designed, was based on constitutional types.
This type needs more sleep, this type needs less sleep, in this situation, this profession. There are all these things that a rabbi could determine.
Sure. But then the question is, where are there areas where it's just not a factor you take into consideration? For example, I just physically can't keep Shabbat. It's not good for me. What I'm asking is, so where do you draw the line with this? Take your own personal being into consideration.
For Shabbat, it's very clear. It says to preserve your health and your life.
Absolutely. So there are the other variables very clear. But let's give an example. Actually, maybe I shouldn't talk. I'll one put it earlier.
Go for it.
When we pray late in Shabbat morning, let's say. So there's a halakha. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot says that you're not allowed to eat before you pray.
Right.
And the rabbis actually go so far as to say some pretty terrible things about somebody who does. Pretty much, why bother come to pray afterwards? Because if you consider yourself more important, your food more important than going to ask Hashem to take care of you and to sustain you and to support you, so then just don't bother coming. Hashem says, well, I don't understand. Now you're coming to talk to me? Now you had your breakfast, you had your cookies and cakes and a cup of coffee, you read the newspaper, now you're going to come talk to me? And the Gemara is pretty strict about it. The Rambam codifies this as a halakha, not just an idea. Maran Shulchan Aruch codifies as a halakha also. And then you have these gray areas of maybe drinking is okay. And, obviously Shabbat morning you can't fast, so you drink. You drink water, you drink, some say tea or coffee, different generations. If sugar was expensive, not expensive, so today we drink sugar or juice. Certain things that are okay to drink before Tefillah. You have people that we pray 9 o'clock in the morning. So you pray 9 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to sit down for Kiddush at least before 11:45. At least. And that means what you're asking a person to do is from Friday night dinner to fast. Until the point of not fast in the technical, you can't actually fast. You can drink water, let's say, before Tefillah. But how far can you go on water? So all of a sudden you have a whole slew of, opinions. Oh, if it's going to help you daven better, if it's going to this, if it's going to that, if it's going to everything. But at the end of the day, the choice is yours when to do tefillah. You could have prayed at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then by 8 o'clock, you'd be able to have breakfast. Oh, so why are you praying at 9? Because people that don't care about eating before tefillah, they decide that they want to pray at 9. So that's a problem. And then what you end up is people fasting. After every Shabbat, they struggle with it. I don't eat before tefillah. I barely drink water before tefillah. I come to B'tzkazah, and until I do Kiddush, I'm ready. And then the first thing I drink is wine. Can you imagine? So, wine, it's, all kinds of different wines and everything, it's a different thing.
What about for health reasons?
So obviously if a person is sick, so then again you put this into the factor.
What if a person needs to drink a cup of tea?
Drinks are okay to have before tefillah. Most people would agree on. As long as the rule is as long as it's not what we call derech gava. For example, you wouldn't be able to go to Starbucks and order yourself a frappuccino and sit down and drink it before shachrit, even though drinks are okay, because that's something that it's not something you drink before you head out the door. It's like having breakfast. But
you can do it on Shabbat anyway.
Absolutely. So I'm talking Sunday morning or Monday morning or Tuesday morning. And the idea is that there are certain things where you have the ability to change the situation. You have the ability to pray. When I was first in yeshiva, I never heard of this thing that here in San Diego we all ate before tefillah.
Yeah.
I mean, kids, they go to school, they have breakfast before they go to school. Now you could say kids are different. You could say that in the East Coast, what many religious schools do is they have tefillah, and then they have breakfast at the school. That way parents don't have to worry about that step, and the kids, okay, so I remember back in the day, Rabbi told us to pray a little bit at home, or Shaar. So for school kids, that works, but what about adults? You're building ideal communities, and it's a really big problem. It's a big problem because there's not even any awareness. And for the first year in yeshiva, I felt like I was starving to death. And then you get used to it. You kind of get used to waiting a little bit to have breakfast. And it does a whole different thing to your tefillah. When you come to tefillah and you're full and you're ready to go, there's a whole different experience of tefillah you have than when the first thing you do in the morning is tefillah. So listen, we pray at 7, we pray at 6:30. Those times of the week are early. It's easy. You can eat afterwards.
Yeah, that's
But
easy.
Shabbat is a whole different story. And I wouldn't judge a person who by 11:45 feels that they have to take a bite of something. Because what can I do? Well, that's the way it works. But that halachically there's a problem. So this justification wouldn't be able to be carried so far. Then you have people who do this as like a lechatchila, like you have to eat before davening. That way you can daven properly and think properly and pray. And now we're making up new halachot. You have to be careful with these things. Yeah, there's a story in the Hasidic community. There's a story about a Rebbitzin that she wasn't feeling well, and she used to pray very fast in order to eat. And so her husband, the Rebbe, said, don't pray in order to eat, you should eat in order to pray. And so he gave her a leniency that she could eat before she prayed. And from here, thousands of people around the world are eating before tefillah. Now there's a problem in the story. Two things. One is, what was her health state? Her state of health was? Bad. She was not a healthy lady. Anyway, she was allowed to eat before tefillah. And the second thing you can't learn from the story? What was she?
She was
a woman. Her chiyuv of tefillah is perhaps, you could argue, different than that of a man. She has a chiyuv of tefillah, but is she obligated to start tefillah right in the morning, the first thing in the morning? Could be not. And you can't extrapolate things from a story that doesn't match to our current situations today. These are gray areas in halakha. So when we say a person can sleep however much he needs in order to serve Hashem, so here Shulchan Aruch is giving us that leeway. But we can't use this argument everywhere in life to get away with things. Everyone agrees with me?
Yeah. So what is the? Well, it's kind of off the topic, but
Sure.
What is the minimum amount you need to pray so you can eat and then go to shul and do the rest of the davening? I mean, would the Shema be enough to say, okay, I prayed, I can have a snack and then go to shul and do the rest, or?
It's a great question.
Cake.
Is the Shema a tefillah? Is it a prayer?
Shemona Esrei
Shemona Esrei. Shema is not a prayer. Shema, I mean, it's an essential part of tefillah, but it's part of the Chumash. It's not a prayer. So essentially, what you'd have to do is probably pray all of Shacharit, not Musaf. Shacharit until when you open up the Aron Kodesh. In which case, you can make Kiddush and eat, but then you have a whole different ballpark of questions of are you allowed to eat before Kiddush, before Kriyat Torah, before Musaf? Are you allowed to eat before you do a meal later? All kinds of questions that come up in that regard. But let's say that would be the best option. But then again, then you lose out praying Shacharit to the Minyan. It's healthier. It's healthier for a community to pray early in the morning Shabbat. Family-wise, not early. Early doesn't have to be 6 o'clock in the morning. You have to come to the Shabbat. 8 o'clock, 8:15.
But you could wake up before Alot Shachar and eat, right? And then, because that's not yet.
Yeah, sure. If you want to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you could definitely go for it.
The fast would be fast.
Yeah.
5 o'clock.
You got a few years younger.
I guess I'll have a piece of cake for health reasons.
No, what I'm saying is,
Piece of cake.
at 8 o'clock,
Piece of cake.
let's say you would pray at 8 o'clock. So anyways, it's early.
Well, that's
I'm
not
saying
bad.
that.
That's not bad.
And then you finish, you really just pray. You just do tefillah. You skip all the stuff that we throw in there. It's not a ceremony, it's a tefillah service. So 8 o'clock, 10:15, 10:30, you're at the door. You want to say you exaggerate? 10:45. You're already home. You're making kiddush. You could have a little bit of a snack. You could go rest a little bit. You could learn a little bit, read a little bit. You can make lunch. You don't have to rush right into mincha. It's ridiculous. You do Birkat Hamazon, and you have to go to synagogue for
Days
mincha.
here are too long.
I mean,
for it.
yeah.
San Diego is like,
And it's something to think about. Like,
Israel's
really.
like that. 8 o'clock, a lot of shuls daven.
I know when I told my parents the schedule of our synagogue, we're pretty good. We start at 9. I mean, there are other synagogues that are later than us. He said, so when did you spend time with your family? It's like, when do you rest? When do you have Shabbat time? Like, when just the whole day you're in and out of eating in synagogue? He was blown away by it. He couldn't believe that we did such a thing. It's something to think about. Just throwing it out there. Fine, continues Rabbi David Yosef. Uviyom Shabbat Kodesh, and on the day of Shabbat, Nachon v'raui, it's fitting and proper, l'chol adam, for every person, she'yishan ma'at, that he should sleep a little bit on Shabbat, in the daytime. U'makayem bezen, he fulfills on this mitzvat oneg Shabbat, a mitzvah of oneg Shabbat,
joy of Shabbat.
of enjoying Shabbat. Some say that for a Torah scholar, his joy is to learn Torah, while for the person who's not a Torah scholar, so he likes to sleep. So everyone should do what he enjoys most. But the other rabbis say, no, you got it wrong. The Torah scholar, he learns Torah the whole week. So Shabbat, for him, he enjoys to rest. The other guy, the whole week, he's resting. So Shabbat, he has time to learn. Especially if this is his, he normally takes rests. We call makom af b'yom Shabbat lo yarich b'shana, but also on Shabbat the person shouldn't stretch out his sleep, even though we know that Arizal did. Ela kedei lekayim shena b'Shabbat anu, but he should do it to fulfill that obligation of resting on Shabbat. Ukvar amru Chazal, and the rabbis already said, שהקדוש ברוך הוא נתן לישראל את השבת, Hashem gave a Shabbat כדי שיעסקו בה בתורה, so that a person may learn Torah.
A lot of people in places like New York, because they're so sleep deprived, it's like I've seen this when I go to New York, it's like Shabbat is basically go to shul Friday night and maybe Saturday morning and sleep the rest of the time. We have a lot of that.
I'll tell you, when
sleep deprivation from work. Seriously.
When my wife and I first got married, my wife had a very hard time adjusting to our schedule here on Shabbat. I'll explain to you what I mean. But by the way, just on a side note, I was once at someone's house. He said, "Oh, we did last Shabbat. We did a bagel." That's what they call it. Bagel? What do you do a bagel? What does that mean? Turns out that by his lingo, doing a bagel means sleeping from Friday after Friday night dinner until Havdalah on Motzei Shabbat.
Oh my.
Basically, he's a rasha, but he he's scared. What can he do? The guy doesn't have enough time to sleep in his whole life, so that's what he does. That's not Shabbat. That's not Shabbat Tanu. So when my wife and I got married, she moved here. She's like, when do we rest? When do we take a break? The whole day, from the morning to the bit is back to home, to the bit is back home. We have a class. We have a class. We have mincha. Mincha is another class. Then we do havdalah. Havdalah, people come to. So when do you rest?
Sunday.
That's true, but it's true. But then,
a
few months into our being married, you know, Shabbat is totally different here than it is in New York. And she's come from a very religious community. She says, you wake up in the morning, and we go to the synagogue, and we come back home, and we eat lunch, and it's early. It's 10:30, 11 o'clock. 11:30, everyone's done lunch, 12 o'clock, then everyone goes to sleep.
It used to be like a ghost town. Like, I think the Shabbats I spent in New York, it's like, because I don't sleep like that. Never did. Maybe 20 minutes. But where is everybody? There's no one to visit. There's nowhere to go. It's like, so just take long walks like I do now. There's nothing else happening.
So everyone gets into bed, and maybe they wake up for mincha.
Right.
Definitely for Alvit. And then they do Havdalah, and that's Shabbat. So this is a religious community. She was blown away that people come back for a shiur before mincha, which we normally do when the Shabbats are longer. She couldn't believe it. And not two people. It's like, in New York, the people who come for the shiur before mincha are like the guys who don't know how to sleep in the afternoon. Zev would come, but everybody else would be. And the people who just, I don't know, they had nothing better to do, so to speak. Here, it's like people who are the serious people. They're the ones who are back studying Torah here. And then they stay for mincha. So you can imagine someone would give a speech about Sudash Shishit Bayat. They would leave the room. So what would happen? The whole Shabbat loses its flavor. So again, that's the downside of leaving too much time in the day to just people feel, oh, we have 6 hours, we can't do anything, let's go to sleep.
That's my view for that.
So definitely have to find the middle road.
Well, New York, it's usually too hot or too cold.
To be outside.
Yeah. So here it's like every day. People are up, it's bright, you feel good, you're up and around. So it's a little bit different.
It's a different style,
You don't
different
want to
place.
sleep the whole day away. But in New York, then people stay up all night. It's pretty average to stay up till 1, 2 in the morning, even on weekdays. I can remember at the Abasera, always things going till early hours, every single night. And Friday and Saturday night,
The whole night.
dancing, music, all the time.
So the truth is, Motzei Shabbat, people always invite me to their house Motzei Shabbat. I don't have any koch left Motzei Shabbat. It's because we don't rest. I don't have 10 minutes to just take a break.
Rabbi's job is...
It's true, I work. I'm the only one who's allowed to work on Shabbat here.
Right.
Not sleep. You don't sleep.
Me? When do I have time to sleep? By the time we finish Tefillah, we do lunch, it's over. They have to be back from Mincha. So
Winter time, summertime, I have one time.
Summertime, maybe. Could be. But it's not always summertime. But there are people in Israel who they don't switch the clock. Certain Hasidim, they don't change the clock. So they never have this where, sunset is at 4 o'clock. It's earlier, but it's not like now. They're always starting their day earlier.
Wait, we're on standard time now.
This is standard time?
Yeah.
So then in the summer,
It goes ahead, it's daylight.
it gives you more time?
Yes.
So what do they do in Israel? Let me think through it.
It's about an hour more, right?
Yeah.
So let me think about what they do in Israel then.
No, they do the same thing. They have daylight saving time in Israel. So.
No, but there are some people that they have I guess they have a different clock. I don't know what it is they're doing.
Well, it'd be interesting to check that.
I'm going to look into it. I remember once in Yerushalayim, the guy told me that Rebbe's Tish is going to be at 10 o'clock. And I came and it was, nobody knew what I was talking about. They have a different 10 o'clock than I do. They should tell me, 10 o'clock, our time. Look at the top of 91. Yesh nohagim. Maran says some have the custom.
For first time you try to figure out, second time you do all right.
The chotz PM shachri, to wash their mouth in the morning. Mipnei haririn shebetoch hapeh. Where's Jack with our English in the Shulchan Aruch? Because of whatever is in your mouth when you wake up in the morning.
What's the word for what's in your mouth?
Ririn. I'm trying to get you an exact translation of ririn. That's a good question. 1 second. I don't understand the way here. Oh, but let's see. Wrong one.
Schmutz.
Yeah, probably I'm trying to get an English word for it. Roll, maybe you could just look through that stack of books.
Which one?
I'll tell you, I actually don't see it from here.
I'm sorry, from here.
No, I don't see it. I don't see my book from here.
Don't fit?
Maybe in the second stack, look on the second side. Are there 2 big brown books?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
These two?
Yes.
What's the no again?
It's
Thank you.
customary.
Oh, custom. Those who have custom.
Yeah, there are those who are.
Those who are, yeah, those who are custom.
Yeah.
Here it says ririm with a mem, not a nun. It doesn't spell anything. I'm thinking it's saliva, but like a stale saliva, I guess. I don't know how it's translated. Interestingly enough, you have to know how lucky you are here. And Mishnah Berurah brings out, what if a person is too finicky to wash his mouth out with the water that he has, because it's probably not clean water? What does that mean?
Well, we talked earlier about like if the water isn't clean, how clean does it have to be so you can wash your hands? But then you don't
Couldn't
say
people
bracha.
had water lying around that either they used to wash things with, or it came from a source that wasn't exactly something you'd want to drink from? Puddles, ponds, rivers that were not so clean, or things like that. And it could be that to go through some kind of purification of. I don't know how people did it then. Shulchan Aruch talks about pouring water through a cloth so that all the worms get stuck in the cloth and not in your water, and then you drink the water. Imagine that, right? And are you allowed to do it on Shabbat? Is it separating? Is it not separating? All kind of questions that come up with that. And it says that if a person is too finicky to use that water in his mouth, so he could pray without it anyways. And it's not a must, but we're going to talk about washing our mouth later, as it says that last sentence in Halakha B'ra. It says, Din shtifat hapeh, the halachot of washing our mouth, uchitzat hapanim, and washing our face. Achar hanetila, after washing your hands, nitba'er le'el siv yud. Was already explained on page 57 or 58. 57, do you remember that? 57, we mentioned that you have to wash your mouth out before you do tefillah.
Yeah, remember we talked about it.
Before you do what?
Before you do tefillah, but after you wash your hands.
Okay, all
Oh,
together.
saliva,
Okay.
built up saliva. We should clean it up.
Oh, okay. Built up.
Finish
So
try.
stale. Close. Ririn are literally like strands, I guess.
Yeah, it's that stringy stuff.
Yeah, that's what it would be. There's some things you read about in Maran, I see like how with it HaShamayim were. Some signs they had could have been faulty signs. Not their fault. Just like today, I would rely on medical professionals to give me advice in medicine. Our rabbis had the same attitude back in the day.
There's different medicines.
Different medicines. I said medical professionals. I didn't mention any
No,
specific
but-
kind of medical professional.
But a lot of the same logic in traditional medicines is what they were referring to.
Okay.
So it was based on a different premise of It's like we were talking about natural measurements of the body.
No, I'll give you an
rather
example.
than
Like
digital this,
certain
that.
animals that perhaps Chazal believed could exist that weren't,
Oh.
don't, things like that.
Like the unicorn.
Yeah, science. I don't want to get into the details of this, but there are things that, okay, that wasn't there. They relied on certain sources that they thought were valid, and not something that came to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't tell them that this animal existed or didn't. There were some things he did, and that's what we have to be true. But you see halachot like this, right? Like, what goes on in your mouth at night, or Maran has a halacha in Shulchan Aruch where he says you're not allowed to touch money and then touch your mouth, or you can't put money near your mouth. And he mentions because there are diseases that people pass through money, things like that. Some people, and this is like today they tell you in school, you touch coins, wash your hands because you don't know who touched them. But that's something that took them so many thousands of years to figure out. Jews were already doing this forever. They were careful not to touch money, put them in their mouth. Things you're not allowed to do while you eat. Certain levels of hygiene that other people
Kept us
weren't
from
always
plague.
so careful. It kept us through all kinds of things throughout our history. So these are areas of halakha that just we should be proud of, that we have them.